Today is Saturday, November 22nd, I believe. It is a cloudy, foggy day, but it looks like the rain has gotten over itself anyway. We are in the Tribog area. We are going to continue a project ongoing to overland and get the lay of the land in the middle part of this area, which is not the most remote, but it is large, and it is conceivable habitat broken up by the state line, which does kind of obscure how large the actual area is. And then as we get into colder months, and it's harder to get up to Vermont, again, as I said in the last video, because they close the gates and that cuts off a lot of access, we're going to do kind of a expansion into the concept of that and kind of just overlap and get into the hinterlands of this area and learn to know areas. I was able to connect the dots last week to one area. I'm going to try to do the same today and see if that works out. But we're going to do that. We'll come along. There's a little bit of gossip potentially, but we'll do that and see where we are in between with things that may or may not happen. So that being the case, let's get moving. Thanks. Since we're going to do the majority of this video, at least we plan to do, most of it doing an overland thing. And it's nice to see the sun coming out to improve weather conditions. I was initially wondering if I was going to be putting on the rain poncho. And I kind of rolled the dice I wouldn't, but it was supposed to be clearing up too. And for once, it's nice to see the weather doing what weather guy says it was going to do. Pardon my burping. The only real gossip this week, is an ongoing war of words between the Tall Ones guy and Randy Harrington and his buddy Jason. Now, personally, my cynical point of view is, if you spent any amount of time, logged any amount of time in the Bigfoot community, such as it is, you'll know that pretty much anyone you're going to come across, if you look hard enough, will probably have some kind of perceivable dirt on them. And this includes people who are well respected. Again, I've been around for more than 2 decades. I could name names, but that would take a while. And there's better things to talk about, honestly. And would just draw wars of words, and that is not the intended purpose of my channel and the things on it. Not beyond a point, anyway. But the current war of words, and this is one where I'm going to kind of throw some shade at Randy Harrington, because this is a person with a long track record of backstabbing people, all the while trying to act like the righteous party, if not the victim in the whole thing. And that's why, as much as he did turn his back on his former research group, which is a den of hoaxing, unless they have dramatically changed their ways, I won't hold my breath on that. Deer poo. That I know from my own observation of their activities, but he is one who has to be taken with a wheelbarrow full of salt, because one grain ain't gonna do it. And I guess, and this is kind of the point. So he was defending his buddy Jason, who, I mean, I'll admit, I don't know the meat and gravy of his hoaxing allegations. And I mean, at this point, I look at it more from the perspective of, you're a measure of the people you hang out with. And Randy Harrington, among other things, is a hoaxer. Multiple hoaxes, multiple participations, from Bullet Maker to Team Contra and the clamshell nonsense to the 400, and there's probably a few out there that I'm not aware of yet. And I don't mean I'm going to go snooping into his business, which is really kind of the meat of my criticism today of him. But that's the thing. The problem with being proven to be a hoaxer once in Bigfooting is kind of an absolute. Once you have made one dubious claim, you have to question anything that happens after that. It's okay to misidentify something so long as you allow for the fact you might have had something wrong. In my own most recent, I'll call it a sighting in finger quotes, I saw something get up in broad daylight that I am 99.9% sure was not a black bear and did not look human. In my opinion, didn't act human. But I'm still willing to accept being wrong should I ever be proven wrong. I don't cross over the potential, possible, maybe threshold of a sighting report because I don't have the luxury of knowing for sure. Do I think it was? Yes, I do. In a multitude of encounters, there are things where I think that's what it was. Do I know for certain? Did I walk up and shake its hand or stick it with a knife to get DNA? No. But as far as I'm concerned, with a couple of decades worth of nuanced observations out here, my thought is that it was. One thing I do like about this area, if you notice, is you can see out easily like 100 yards because it's a little bit more open, and during the colder months even more so. So I mean, if you just look and you kind of focus, if something's moving and you're more quiet than I'm being right now, you might get missed and get the drop down on something. And there have been some odd things happen in this area, so I haven't. It's kind of a mixed bag, this area, because on the one hand, it's not immune to human foot traffic, usually hunters and the like, but I have had more unique encounters. Last year, there was a young lady walking in as I was walking out, and she likes to basically just commune and go out into the middle of nowhere and read a book in peace, which there's nothing weird about that. It's just not, like, typically it's somebody walking their dog. It's a hiker or a hunter, occasionally mountain bikers. To my disgust and disdain, ATVers, because they're not legally allowed in here, and they never seem to think the rules apply to them. And if you are one and don't like that statement, fuck you, too bad. Because you're a selfish bunch of entitled little shitheads who fucking ruin it for everyone else, and that is one extreme opinion of the outdoors I have. So if you are an ATVer and you're not doing search and rescue, fuck you, and hopefully the thing dies in the middle of nowhere and Bigfoot throws it in the ditch for you. I doubt he likes the noise either. But probably doesn't help that the last time I saw somebody doing that, they almost hit me on the trail. That might actually form a little bit of bias. Interesting, you see a moose track in the mushy leaves. The ongoing frustration. You always see sign of them. You never actually come across them. Not often, anyway. Yeah, so Randy apparently put on his little, I'm not going to call it even like detective hat. He put on his cyber stalking hat, which is another issue with the MABRC. And just to point out the fact that the group in question is Bigfoot Hoaxers Exposed 2.0. You have a guy who is a hoaxer running the group, who has, up until recently, his class of whatever the year is, Hall of Shame, He has these things because he's basically he's basically making his rounds around the Bigfoot community and stalking people, cyber stalking folks, and then keeping files on them like he's some kind of Bigfoot or CIA or something. And given his own past, it's also a massive exercise in hypocrisy, but to each their own. I know the things I know about some people mainly just because it's become public knowledge. And there's no shortage of that kind of news just from that source. So, enough said. Bear with me 1 second while I attempt not to get wet feet in 40 degrees. It's a nice little scene right there. But it seems like Randy went to stalk through the past of the Tall Ones guy. I'm not going to name his name out of respect for his privacy. I am familiar with one episode from his past where he got pulled into a questionable situation. I don't know, or to be honest, care enough about the details to go that deep into the weeds, but he has since apparently matured and learned his lesson. And, sorry. That's worthy of a picture. Hold that thought for 1 second. Looking at this next thing here, this literally looks... I think it was last year I kind of accused some people of actually constructing shit like this to make it look like more than it is. That really looks like that to me because... When was it? I think it was like end of March last year on one of the trees right in this area. There's like a really expensive trail cam that somebody was trustingly left out here. The kind that has a SIM card in it. So, I mean, if you take it, you're probably getting recorded doing it, but not like the little $40 freaking 720 pixel range. More like the 4K, and he's beaming it back through, assuming he has a signal through a SIM card. Cool, but number one, I don't believe in thievery, so I didn't take it. But number two, I also would be, common sense is it's recording you if you do. And if there's a locator thing in there and they find you, well, you just did something stupid and got caught. So I did a silly dance to freaking, I didn't moon the camera, though I was tempted. But I did do a silly dance for their entertainment. Because I just felt like it. And as an environmental note before I get back to the cyber stalking nonsense, the leaves today being matted down by the rain, potentially in some areas anyway, are a lot better for tracking. I've already seen some deer tracks and some moose tracks and the evidence thereof. As they dry out, though, that's probably going to diminish as the morning wears on. Yeah, so the evidence I'm aware of was where this guy from the podcast got sucked into a situation that was one part habituation, one part woo. And has since renounced it and said it was bullshit. So he saw it for what it was and likely learned his lesson. A person I know from my own state got pulled into the 400 and got sucked in, and since has had to see it for what it is and learn some growth internally. And these things happen. Coles himself got sucked in by Biscardi for a bit in the freezer monkey thing because he had to know, his own words at the time, from a conversation we had years ago. I could have told you how it was going to turn out. I wasn't wrong, but he had to know, so he went and he was there. And then he had to pay, for a couple of years, he had to pay a price for people placing him there, which is unfortunate, but also predictable. There are unfortunately a good number of people in the community that love to see somebody with a reputable name take a fall, which kind of segues us into the next bit of this. First of all, guy from the tall ones, did he hoax during that? In my opinion, no. I think he got sucked in. He may have been, and I could be wrong on this, but he may have been new to the subject. And therefore, there would have been potentially an element of naivete. And just to kind of segue away and ramble and annoy people, we're at the stone fence. We're going to follow that up as a navigational aid and then go over it and go to the right behind the wetland and start an overlapping connecting of the dot sequence in that direction for as long as, honestly, I feel like doing. The weather is getting better. I was kind of initially feeling conservative because of the potential of rain, but it seems the sun is going to pay us a visit for the best of the, so it's going to warm up a little bit too. So with conditions improving, we'll go a little bit further and see. I want to hop the fence here though and kind of follow it on the other side. And if we do find something weird, we already know there is somebody out here gathering pine cones for a probable wood stove. Where, we'll stay on this side for now. Like I said, I think Tall Ones guy was potentially naive to parts of the subject and has since maybe had to eat a little crow, but he learned something along the way, which is never. I'll offer him the diplomatic Pollyanna view of that, of it's good for growth. Or you can be a cynical asshole like me, and when Culls was talking to Biscardi kind of has the warped charm of a used car salesman. And I think because Steve really did want to be in on the sitch, should it be real, this may have temporarily clouded his judgment. And then he went on to garner the fodder to write a book, basically. And my decision now is, do I follow the wood line, which is what I intend? Because we've already been over there. And if you actually look way enough over there, you can actually see where the wetland is several hundred yards that way. Not a big jump, but it's a start. We're going to kind of loop up around this tree, keeping the wetland in mind. And see if I remember right that it gets a lot thicker behind there as I don't step on those deer pellets. But the fact that rather than look within and question what his buddy Jason did or didn't do, Randy goes looking for dirt on Tall Ones guy. TOG, or we'll just call him Tog. Not out of disrespect, just acronyms are easier. So going to digging Tog's past and effectively found the first situation the guy found himself on the wrong side of, unfortunately, but he learned since and has become more of a critical thinker since. And this is a good thing. Much as I don't really want to go uphill, I'm going to follow the grain of the hill and stick to the back side of this thing because that was my original intent. Knowing that if I'm going in the direction I believe I am, give or take 5 to 10 degrees to the northeast, then, actually, wait a minute. Northwest. East is that way. One thing I am lucky enough to have is a decent sense of orientation in a familiar area. This is not thoroughly unfamiliar. We're probably going to go a little bit into an area I haven't been directly in, but not so much that, I mean, knowing that the wetland is over there, worst case scenario, I walk out over there, I walk around that to the other side, come up on the trail over there to walk back the long way around to the car. So potentially getting lost on a level of relative inconvenience more than anything else. They won't be sending the helicopters though. So get around behind all this bullshit. Interesting. That don't look like it was placed there. But again, you had a person gathering mushrooms, gathering pine cones for a thing right over there. Initial gut feeling, humans. I wonder if the hunters still have their stash over here. A couple of years ago, two guys I encountered on the way out, I found their little hidey hole where they had their snacks and they might have had a whiskey bottle in there. So you find those pretty often, actually. There's one over by the lean-to that's off that way. You'd have to go drive a half an hour to get there, but there's a guy there last year that had the stash that his wife probably doesn't know about. I thought that was funny when I found that. Mainly because it was 3/4 of the way gone, so he had already been hitting that on an overnight stay or something. I find that funny. But as a good friend said, camping without beer is basically just sitting in the woods. There's an element of truth in that. So we have a secondary stone wall over here to mark as a barrier to use for navigation. And I suddenly wonder if this is the one I was at for pine cones. I'm going to briefly investigate the possibility I mistook the stone wall, which is guilty of making me human, but let's see. I guess I'd be right along here. If not, then the nature of the mystery is where it is. And I'm not going to overly commit to this because it's not the true purpose of the exercise today. Needless to say, if I find them, they're big piles and they'll be obvious. But if not, that's all right. Because you'd be looking down here, you'd be able to see them. And lo and behold, 1, 2, we have a winner. They're still here. So all that stuff I said about the firewood. No, let's check out the weirdness for a moment. This is not a random falling. This is like, this shit was stacked for some reason. I'm not attributing this to anything particularly out of the ordinary. There's actually 1, 2, 3, 4 piles. Somebody was out here. I don't know what or who is doing that. I'm not going to stack these up for some reason. It's just an interesting thing to find. Beyond that, I don't really care past a point. But that wasn't the purpose of today's visit. So we're going to do this and follow the visibility threshold of the wetland for a bit and see where it might end up taking us. If I'm right, there's an area over a couple of hills that is like a skinny little kind of parallelogram sort of shaped meadow. Yeah, rather than look within or look at his buddy Jason with a more critical eye, he went looking for dirt on Tog and found one area where he got sucked into a dumb situation. And that's kind of an interesting thing. It tells a little bit about the guy's judgment and motives. Years ago, on a similar note, and I debate whether I'm going to give their names or not, there are two very well-known Bigfoot researchers, and like recognizable instantly. I was a member of the Alliance of Independent Bigfooters, among other groups, and had made some questionable friendships with other people, notably the perpetrator of the Claus photo hoax. Call it what it is. And that individual at one point had pointed out a member of a different group from somewhere down in the South. I'm not going to commit to a state. I forget what state they're in, but they were at one point associated with MK Davis. And what the guy actually did is questionably a matter of dubious judgment, playing a practical joke during the course of a outing, an expedition, and the person who, the Claus hoaxer, basically called him out, said it was a hoax. Probably more just a lame practical joke, but at the time, I made a comment on her forum saying I more or less agreed. And on a similar note of choosing popularity and loyalty to friends despite their dubious background versus looking at a situation where you potentially have somebody who might be a hoaxer in the midst of your group, given the number of people there that actually had reputable standings in the community at the time, if you want to call it that, they apparently read this post and ignored the fact she was the accuser, and I just kind of agreed with it. But that was enough to get me banned from their group and thrown out of the group and banned. And the ironic thing of the whole thing was the guy who was accused of being a hoaxer actually defended me in this whole thing, of all the ironies. And the person who made the accusation, because she was friends with this person, who has a reputation for knowing people within Indian tribes, I'll say that. You can kind of deduce who she is. Over time, I've noticed she has a shitty tendency to make friends with the wrong people, though, despite her own reputation, which is why I don't hold her in any particular high esteem. She has become, over time, quite full of herself. I'm not going to get more critical than that, but she's not my favorite. But it was her husband who actually threw me out of the group, and I could have and probably should have said, so I'm the one agreeing, she's the one accusing, and I know she's your wife's friend, but why am I being tossed and she remains? When she's the one who actually did that. The reason is popularity, and that's the big flaw in the Bigfoot community. Too many people ignore dubious behavior because it's done by one of the cool kids, and if you call them out, you place the risk that your own place in the popularity contest that is the community will be called into question. Saying all too much about your own motivations. Whereas I've become a grizzled old curmudgeon and frankly don't give two fucks what anyone thinks about me, because frankly, if you are somebody who's doing wrong, I have called out certain people like Culls when I don't agree with something that they do. If you were to want to, and if it is proving true, it's going to get thicker over there. If he wanted to call me out and have a debate about it, I'd be open to do so. But the thing, most of the time, he's been willing to agree to disagree on certain things, and we are still on relatively good terms, far as I know. He's also put up with a prank or two over time, so there's that. Some people, it's funny because on that aspect of the thing, some people are so fucking full of themselves, they literally have no sense of humor. which is funny in its own right, but the way I was taking this, though, so that kind of segues us into the Culls podcast of this last week, where he was talking about misinformation versus disinformation. And the difference between the two is you have somebody, this is typically woo people in my mind, but people who are either really too quick to just chuck Bigfoot as the cause for something, or sorry, I was listening into something, or they tend to be more wooish, or they just tend to like, or you also can like throw this towards the people that think everything like this is Bigfoot, when there's a lot of fucking wind that comes through this area, and you know, wind does actually knock trees and shit down. I've literally seen it happen with my own two little eyes. So that's misinformation. Somebody making a claim of something where it's not really there and not really that. Versus disinformation, which is hoaxers or people on a more nuanced level that have an agenda. I mean, one classic example is Todd Standing. Todd Standing is a long time known hoaxer. And anything he says, as far as I'm concerned, is full of shit. And he can go fuck himself. Biscardi's another one. There are others. Some might even throw that at Matt Moneymaker. And there are people that may or may not watch my videos that might get pissed at my saying that, but it wouldn't be the first time I've heard that said of him too. I myself would likely put him more in the category of misinformation, because so it's basically just wind going through the upper parts of this area. But disinformation is the one where, and you kind of have to wonder what the motivation for the disinformation is. You have people like Will Jennings, Will Jeffrings, or I forget his name, the guy that runs JRG, makes frequent references to Mr. Black and suggesting government involvement. That's something I'm dubious of without more proof. I don't know enough about the guy. Are we full? Maybe not. The camera quit on me. I don't know enough about his background to call him a hoaxer. Most of my dealings with him have been neutral to positive, so I'm not going to badmouth the guy just because I don't know enough to say otherwise. That being said, you never know. Other people have podcasts and they're painting a certain narrative. The hell's the guy that does Sasquatch Chronicles has the big scary Bigfoot monster presentation that he likes to paint Bigfoot in the vein of. Well, if you're wondering what I'm doing, I'm seeing where it gets all thick as shit down here. I'm trying to just find a way, if I can just kind of wheedle through here and see where I can get. I'm going to go down so far, but then I'm going to double back and go that way. This is kind of taking me not quite in the direction I want to go in, but I just want to see if it thins out, and you're just basically getting the more patchy laurel shit, which is navigable if you're willing to do more of a zigzaggy thing. People that are disinformation people are the ones like, well, you have the tripartite of Paulides and Carpenter and Ketchum that are just selling their bullshit, and that's the motivation for that one, and probably a lot of them, is cash flow. And that's a lot of it. Follow the money, like so many other things. And I'm going to go this way first, and then I may go down that way to see if there's an opening over there to pop through. But the dark side of this, and we've covered this a little bit in the past, is when they're out on YouTube and they utilize the very dubiously functional YouTube protocols of DMCA strikes and things, basically to silence the people that are not buying their narrative. They'll do it through either like a copyright claim or privacy concerns or shit like that. And unfortunately, YouTube not having any fucking horse in the race of Bigfooting may well act on the strike in their favor because, again, they don't have a dog in the fight. They don't care. But, which is unfortunate, but also partially the reality. I mean, your typical person who does not follow Bigfoot stuff and is just like part of the quote unquote mainstream, they're not gonna give a shit about Bigfoot politics and the like. And I get that. Which is why when Bigfooters whine that like the new show that came out isn't really for them, it's like they know that. The TV people know that. They're chasing ratings. They don't give two shits about you wanting it a given way. Because that probably is not going to appeal to a broad spectrum of non-Bigfooter people. And that is good and bad, but it's basically ratings. And they're chasing ratings. And well, I mean, they're chasing ratings. That's the reality of it. And so, like what Coles was talking about a couple of podcasts back, where he's thinking about doing his own show that way. Or if you have somebody out here like me doing this vlog style thing, you're getting, well, you're getting my thoughts at the moment. I don't really do the field work on camera beyond like tracking level stuff, but and I would put out more trail cams in this area, but I'm going to wait till it gets dark, gets colder out, because the area is not immune to hunters, and hunters may or may not have sticky fingers. And if they're locals, they probably know the woods fairly well too. I have actually run into locals in some weird places, but that's because they walk the woods and it's part of their greater neighborhood, and they probably know spots I don't. Although that's been true in the reverse in Vermont. But a couple of thoughts on that. Number one, looks like a deer was scratching there as I see that, looking like a deer track. I'm going to see how thick this stuff is. Yeah, it looks thick. But that's where all these backstabby shenanigans come from. The Alliance of Bigfoot of Independent Bigfooters, the AIBR, was a combination of senior people in the BFRO and former members who had a tenuous sense of peace with some of the current still higher ups in the BFRO. A lot of the other groups, if people aren't aware of the history from that era, a lot of the groups like the SRI, which became the Michigan Recording Project, and others were basically people who had left the BFRO, probably because they didn't care for Mr. Moneymaker, but reasons can vary, you never know. But they were basically the popular and cool kids of the community, and that's why the group, aside from the fact they never actually went out in the woods and did anything under that banner, if one were more paranoid, they could make the argument they basically set it up as a blanket organization to kind of keep an eye on what everyone else was doing so they could get their fingers in it if it turned out to be something juicy. And I don't know. I have become cynical towards the community largely because of that. I don't know how far into this I'm going to go. I'm going to see if there's like a general direction you can tell, and then I mean, I know roughly where I am, but if you got turned around in this shit, I don't want to End up having to walk aimlessly for an hour trying to figure out what direction I'm going. Good, that finally got out of there. I was also waiting for a damn sneeze to come in or not. I hate that. What I find funny is once they decide you're on the outs, you fall into that category of, well, we're going to run you out of the Bigfoot community. Okay, and you're not in the community anymore, so I'm still out in the woods, though. What have you accomplished? Other than, we think you're not cool anymore. Who fucking cares? Huh? Who fucking cares? I fucking hate that this kind of weather gets you producing snot. You end up sounding like you're dying. That might be enough time to ragging on that. In more immediate news, yesterday, in my own suburban neighborhood walking trail, I had an aggressive encounter with a very obviously rabid raccoon. Posted briefly about it on my wall on Facebook, where essentially it was actively pursuing, God damn it, excuse me, any hunter in the given variety knows there's somebody out here dying now. Better. Having had the raccoon actively pursuing them up a hill under the overpass that was there. And the guy had to get his girlfriend to gather up their two dogs and get them away from the raccoon. And he briefly got the thing to hesitate and go behind a tree, which I thought I had the opportunity to kind of walk past the whole affair and just avoid any interaction with what was clearly an animal that was not right. And God damn it. There is like a little piece of semi-solid snot in the back of my throat that won't die. There's evidence of hunters being out here too. God damn it. Hold on. Sorry about that. If we're done. If not, I'll take another break, but the unfortunate thing, side effect of this revelation of a lot of people's motivations is it makes me a lot more selective about who I'll deal with in the community. Because this person I mentioned from Connecticut who went into the 400 situation has unfortunately had 2 interactions with people from the community, and they both got him burned. So he probably has a similar attitude as I do, and he seems to have taken up the notion that he's going to do his own thing, which is probably better in the long run. If that doesn't die, I'm going to probably just turn off the camera for a bit. Which does kind of kill a lot of collaboration, but a lot of people are in this for the wrong motives, which is why when you have a new person pop up in your greater neighborhood, you'll notice that I don't immediately reach out and extend a hand in friendship until after I've kind of watched them for a while to kind of get a feel of their greater nature. And that's not snobbery or anything. That's just kind of getting a feel for them before you commit to something that's going to suck you into another situation like that. I will not deny that I've kind of ghosted more than one person, because when you find out what they're actually about, you don't want to deal with it. I'm going to go about as far as that and see if that opens up, and then I'm going to kind of have a look on the back side of on this little plateau thing over here. Yeah, that's one thing that's unfortunately the truth is I've kind of learned the hard way. You kind of have to watch your ass a little bit and who you choose to have interactions with. Some are like just newer and need to kind of wise up a little bit, so I'll just kind of avoid interacting with them until some will actually get sucked into that set too, unfortunately. I wonder... Yeah, let's go look at that. That's one of two things. And then I can just backtrack over to that. But I'm not critiquing individuals. I'm critiquing the culture that's been in the community for a long time. It's interesting. I watch a YouTube channel. It's basically about biker gang culture of all things. And I find that a lot of the things this guy talks about are applicable to other kinds of clubs too. The politics of it. You lose sight of what you started out the club for because it starts to become more like an HOA committee or like the HOA board. And it's more about the politics and having control over what people can and can't do. And once a group is just more about the politics than it is about the actual original intended purpose, what's the point? As far as I'm concerned, that's a lot of what happened with Nezra. And it's unfortunate. I mean, I left more just due to methodical differences. But at the end of the day, other people left, and I wouldn't be surprised if they left due to similar reasons about the HOA consideration. Some people just got so obsessive about organizational shit. Like, you know, we're not here just to go camping and sit around and talk about the old days. We're allegedly a research group out here to do researchy shit. And if you're not, maybe you should stay in camp and just do the recording piece and shut the fuck up. And yes, I pointed that at one particular individual I probably will never go in the woods with again. Some bits of the breakup were a little bit more petty, but we'll leave that where it is. Just because... Alright, so I think what this is, and we are going to go to the edge of it because it opens up. I think this is that long, skinny meadow wetland thing. And this does not resemble anyway the way I took the last time, but I think... pretty sure that's what this is. And we're on this end of it. I think we came from over that way before. It's like a long thing like that. It goes for about 50 feet. It's not big or anything. But it is a useful landmarker in the middle of nowhere. So there is that. Yeah, even Nezra, who I was with for like a good 10 years, kind of fell victim of the same thing, which is kind of sad because a lot of the groups give up like that. Personality and all that. Yeah, we're gonna take a break right now. I'm gonna kind of take a look around here, and this is kind of like overlanding into the area. And if you go beyond this and go to the other side, eventually you're gonna find a trail that will take you to it's not part of the Tribog system, but it's on the other side. You'd be in Massachusetts there, and I'm not going to do that because if I do, I'm packing illegally, and I'm not going to... It's not a situation... Interestingly enough, going back to the raccoon, I was in a position last night. I could have put it down. But being that Connecticut is a blue state and you have a duty to retreat, although I did retreat from the thing twice, you are also well within earshot of a couple of houses, and you're on an overpass, so there's a road right there with rush hour traffic, so you'd be talking to the police. And I really didn't want to deal with that, so I made a conscious choice to instead call animal control, and hopefully they send out their little rabid animal assassin to take the little hamburglar looking bitch out and save people the grief of it attacking their dog, and hopefully they do that. Anyway, I'm going to take a break for a second, and I'm going to go and have a look at that. I mean, I'm relatively certain that's what it is. It's not a really, I'm just trying to get the dimensions of it. It's a little open area. It's not anything particular. It's just a little area out here behind the third one. I think I followed the wood line of that and stayed closer to the the big wetland over there before, but we're not so far. I mean, it's literally, you can see it through the cracks over there. I got to go up the hill a little bit, but if you go that way, you're basically on track to go back the way we came. But again, segment break. We'll be back in a bit. We're walking kind of back the way we came. We walked out to where that skinny little opening was, and that was kind of like my landmark of intent today, which we found, so that's good. I do, however, feel a kind of a need to discuss something in a hypothetical sense to a degree. There is something that happened during my time towards the end of Nezra, which is open to some conjecture, because if you talk to them, they would probably say that I left the group in 2015 when the reality was end of 2014. I kind of did a quiet quit where I just, because of some things that had brought us to a head with them, we called it quits and just decided to go off and do our own thing, which is largely the year that Nezin was born instead. In 2015, they had an expedition in an area they had been many times before. It has a history of sightings, not just within the group, but this year was a year that there was a known hoaxer operating in the area, so I had been told. And I'm going to stop shy of accusing somebody in the group of hoaxing, but I'm going to throw out the possibility. Because I found out about the hoaxer being in the area from somebody who admitted to me after the fact that he had found out from somebody within the group who knew. And when they chose to go there, it was very hard not to notice that the person in question didn't say anything about the hoaxer. Which, to me, is troubling. I also know that we're back on the right path now because we're back in the stone wall, which again is why they're so useful. And during the time they were there, the hoaxer was a known thing because they were confronted with a group of younger researchers who apparently were there to try to catch the hoaxer, and there's a strange confrontation. And weirdly enough, I have, as I deviate from this line of observation for a minute, since been out meeting somebody from the other half of this equation, not realizing who they were at the time, but as he was telling his tales, this story came up, and rather than chime in, I thought it would be more strategic to just kind of listen and get their side of events. And seems to me like what happened was a misunderstanding, where the Nezra guys reacted basically out of what I would just call straight up paranoia. Now, the younger guys came into their camp kind of late at night, just being friendly, so they claim, which is enough to make somebody wonder what they want. Were I armed, I might quietly have something in my hand, if I'm being bluntly honest. But they, having been out with this guy, I don't think they had any intentions that were remotely sinister. I think they were just kind of, they were doing an investigation trying to find the hoaxer, which was, I'm not going to say anything bad about that. They, however, got, hello, owl or a hawk. I saw an owl before fly through here, so I'm going to assume it might be him, a barred owl, even though I haven't heard him. If it's a hawk, it's a hawk. It is a raptor in the woods, in an area where raptors are relatively common. But the situation was conflated on the Nezra side because I think they overreacted. Anyway, I also know that one of the people that was there had a weird run-in with somebody who had messed with him at a campsite earlier in the year, so that might have contributed to it. Which makes it a little bit more understandable. The situation with the hoaxer, though, is kind of like that was a year when they were there, and it's like they went in, as far as I know, again, not being told about the hoaxer, which is concerning. Because if you had knowledge and people were going into an area, into like what I'll call a hot zone, why would you not tell your boys that there's a potential that that's going to happen? Now, the one more paranoid thing to be said would be, well, maybe they were in on it. This is where I start to have some conflated problems with certain people in the group, because towards the end, when we started having some of the more petty disagreements with certain people, I'm not going to mention names just to not conflate the situation more than a hypothetical. They had always shown a preference for going to certain areas that were in their own backyard, so to speak, and made some statements about people being afraid to travel when, in fact, for anyone there, you're traveling 4 hours or more to get to where these places are. So afraid to travel my ass. And to say this was like, aside from just being the height of selfishness, straight up rude, but it also makes one look back and question some of the motivations. And that's why saying this a little bit is uncomfortable, but is also, I think, necessary. Because we got into some very petty disagreements about what contributes to what is the Northeast. And according to him, apparently it's just the Adirondacks, which is a lovely area, but it ain't the only one. And he was definitely trying to guide, even after he had not been out in the field with us, if I'm going to get petty about this. Wanted to be in charge and wanted to fucking dictate where we went to go research, to the point of making some pretty damning statements when he got pushback. And the fact of the matter is, a lot of these places have become more human-traveled over time, and it was time, in my opinion, to quote-unquote let them breathe. Needless to say, he disagreed. But how much of things that did happen in these areas had help, is I guess where I'm taking this, unfortunately. Woody knocking sound? Speaking of hoaxing potential. But yeah, unfortunately, even though I'm not where I expected to come out, the stream and the wetland are like right there. I know within 30 feet where I'll more or less I'm going to intersect with the old ATV trail and come out.